right, welcome everyone to another exciting episode of the Team Lead Talks podcast. I'm your host out of Alexandria, Virginia, Andrew Becker. On today's show, I have Jake Clark. Jake is from Nashville, Tennessee, and he's a commercial real estate advisor for SVN Accel Commercial Real Estate. Welcome to the show, Jake. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So let's jump right into this, dude. Tell us a little bit, high level, 80,000 foot, who Jake is, how you got started in real estate, and then we can kind of dive deep into this.
Yeah, so I think I was born into the industry, come from a family of real estate. My dad was a flipper and developer more on the single family world and had a home inspection business. So I just grew up kind of around it up in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
And just kind of, helping him renovate some projects. And as I went through high school and college, I got plugged in with the bigger pockets world and just had a genuine interest into getting into the real estate space, and quickly, had some internships in college, got a finance degree, and then worked in private equity for an institutional medical real estate buyer here in Nashville post-college. Okay. Got my license within, a couple months of moving to Nashville, and then went full-time into commercial brokerage here, going on year 3 now.
Nice, man. So when you got your license, are you referring to your commercial license, or did you just start as a residential agent first and then go commercial?
Yeah. So when I moved here, as I was working for that private equity firm on the acquisition side, I was just doing, part-time, doing more residential deals. I had a lot of friends who were flipping and wholesaling, and I was listing, their properties, still working with investors, but more so on the residential side, think of 2 to 4 units, doing some, distressed single family, helping them find more residential stuff before I actually got into the commercial space.
Okay. So what made you transition, and are you still doing the former, or are you completely out of that, just working commercial side now?
Yeah. So, candidly, just being a little vulnerable here, when the market turned, they had laid off, a large portion of our team when the market turned, when interest rates hiked that summer. Okay. And I had plans in leaving eventually. It wasn't at that moment I was going to leave. I always had that Yeah. I always had that entrepreneurial bug and just wanted to eventually get out of the corporate world and private equity world. It's pretty cutthroat. So I was kind of forced out of it, but grateful for the experience there because I learned so much. I feel like I got my master's in the commercial world working for that firm, but I was kind of forced into it. And literally the day I got laid off, I literally went and showed several multifamily properties later that day. Tried to do it on my own for a little bit before actually joining SVN, which is a national firm. I just figured I could use the guidance and the national reach to do so.
Very cool. So I'm very familiar with retail, investor, flipping side, but SVN, is that considered an equivalent of a Remax or a KW? Is that a brokerage that you hang your commercial license under?
Yeah, and we're a national firm. We're probably ranked number 7 or 8. So we're within the top 10 in terms of commercial. You have your CBRE, JLL, and Cushman & Wakefield are probably the top, 3 in terms of volume and size. We're probably number 7 or 8. Comparing it to the residential world, yes, it'd be like a Keller Williams kind of type of. Yeah, but we operate as a franchise. So we've got the Nashville office, and we're independently owned and operated, just with the SVN brand, and the reason for that is, we try to have a hyper local approach. So that's why, but yeah, there's 1,800, I think, in total advisors across the SVN, and I think we're in at least 45 states. Yeah, maybe one day I'll lead the Hawaii state eventually.
Yeah, if that ever happens, they're looking for a co-founder. I'll also do that. So keep me posted on that one, dude.
We'll do.
Cool, man. So all right. So I'm very familiar, like I said, we had talked before, my background is retail. I know how to market and get leads that way, but it's way different in the commercial side. Walk us through in today's environment and landscape and interest rates and all that good fun stuff, right? Like, how are you maintaining business? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, look, fundamentally, it's the same as residential in terms of generating business. Obviously, you want to build your personal brand and be known as, the multifamily guy or whatever it is you're doing. I still do a lot of outbound marketing, whether that's, mainly it's cold calling, but especially in the commercial space, it's a little different players, maybe a little more, sophisticated, and they really want to know who you are and, your experience and track record and stuff like that. So it's important to like really focus, play the long-term game too, having like, I've got, an email newsletter that I consistently send out monthly and quarterly.
Who are you sending
Super.
this out to, Jake? And just so everyone and I, myself included, understand, you mentioned before we hopped on, so I'd like to clarify this now, that you focus on, what do you say, 5 to 10 unit multifamily commercial?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so I'm focused on just 5+ units, probably with a focus, 25 to maybe 85 units. We'll work stuff greater than that. Like we were working on a 112 unit REO deal, last week that we were representing the bank on. But, our focus, say sub 100, north of 20 is kind of the focus, but really 5+ in the Nashville MSA.
Okay, so you are marketing and sending this newsletter and talking to and building your brand recognition and trust with commercial real estate owners of those buildings. And sometimes those don't include like an individual, sometimes it's a group or a bunch of people. Yeah, can you talk about, like, I didn't mean to interrupt you in there, but that's who your audience is right now.
Correct. Yeah. So, it's maybe more like smaller to mid-sized firms, private equity firms, family offices. I don't really do a ton of like institutional, but even just high net worth JV partners who are looking to syndicate or raise some money to buy some bigger property. Because it is a little bit of a different ball game when you kind of make the jump to greater than 5+ units. So yeah, I'm focused on, those types of groups, even just, high net worth investors and current property owners, who are looking to dive into, 5+ units in Nashville. So
Very
that's
cool.
kind of the reach. Yeah. Active on LinkedIn, and then obviously, cold calling, you're trying to turn it to warm calling, a lot. And these deals take, a little, the sales cycle is definitely a little longer
Yeah.
on the commercial space. I just closed a deal 3 weeks ago, and it was 2.5 years was the sales
Damn,
cycle.
man, that's
Yeah,
crazy. We do
right.
a lot of probates. I'm not on the sales team anymore, but I remember like probate deals, kind of the same thing. Like, I don't know if there's in the commercial world a quick sale, but probates are the same thing where it could take a year or two if there's like 10 different probates that need to be opened or whatnot. But you're in it for the long haul. This is like SEO. It's like
Yeah.
planting a tree 20 years ago and seeing, the fruits of the labor now. So, okay. So you just closed this one deal that started 2.5 years ago. Congratulations, by the way. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you're growing your brand, you're growing your reputation as, like, Jake Clark, the person that can get stuff done. But how are you continuing to outreach to these commercial sellers, owners, etc., and bring a new book of business for yourself?
Yeah. So, one thing that's important on that track record is, one, like getting testimonials and, referrals from past clients. And, I think obviously the best way is to like be active in the market and to constantly have these touch points. It's not like when I'm reaching out, it's not like, hey, are you ready to sell? It's more as like, you're more of an advisor, and it's like, hey, this deal just down the road just closed that you own. It just closed at, 200 a door. Here's the cap rate on it. Here's the price per unit, price,
You
here are
also
the rents.
them on what just happened and how they can cash in, right? Or get out and get into the next thing. Because I'd imagine if you approach someone that in that manner and say, "Hey, Jake, I know you own 10 Main Street unit, however many unit. The one over here just did this. Would you be interested to sell?" And then turn that seller into a buyer to grow into an 80 unit.
Right. And it's like, who would you rather work with? The guy who is just calling and saying, hey, Andrew, are you ready to sell? Or are you going to work with the guy who's like, hey, hey, Andrew, I see you own this property. It actually just closed down the road. Here's a market report I just put together on this specific neighborhood or property type. Let's meet for coffee and lunch. I mean, it's truly a relationship business, and like the best brokers like are not transactional. It's definitely more of a relational and like advisory approach. And like, how can I like be of service to you, and how can I be like the best like market expert? Because I think, and maybe that's kind of a differentiator between like residential and commercial. Not saying that's not relationship based, but it's less like just because it takes so long to get stuff done, and it's just like a different approach, and this is just in my opinion, the way that I conduct, my day to day.
I'd imagine too, retail can be relational, or it is relationship,
Yeah.
but it's also transactional too, because a lot of times the normal American, just talking US here, is buying a house once and living in it for quite some time. But it's a different beast in the mindset of someone who owns multifamily, especially at that level that you were talking about, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 units. They most likely own or want to own more and more and more. They kind of become like addicted to it. So that is, I can see where that big differentiator comes in. If you talk to me and say, "Hey, I can make your dreams come true and double your portfolio, Andrew," then I can see how that relationship grows and really blossoms into like you're doing and bringing me deals all the time.
Yeah, and you want that trust and loyalty in a way. Like you want to be their guy, their broker, their go-to guy to work with, both on buying and selling. I had one client that client that I just closed, 2 weeks ago. We that was just one deal, but we've already worked on two other ones. We're going to be in total, just with that one client relationship, we're at 21 million in terms of volume just
Yeah,
from one client.
yeah, yeah.
And sure, that might take time. That'd be over the course of 3 years, but it just took one key relationship,
Very cool.
and he won't work with anyone else.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are you guys seeing in terms of like, I know the residential side mortgage rates are still kind of high, I guess, if you compare them to like 2%, 3%, where they were like many years ago. But like, what are you seeing? Is there like in commercial, is it a seller's market, a buyer's market? Is stuff sitting for a long time? Like, what's the landscape there?
Yeah, and again, it's definitely hyper local. So just speaking to Nashville, I mean, it's tough, candidly, right now. Just so both starting on the financing side, especially recently. I mean, with you know, even though it's hyper local, just what's going on geopolitically. I mean, we had debt quotes at 5.99% that jumped to 6.4 in a week. So like
Mm,
that changes the sentiment's a pretty important factor, both on the lending side and also buyer and seller side, but especially buyer and lenders. So actually, at this point in time, there's a lot of like the sentiments kind of like people are really hesitant right now, especially banks. And that's just in the past week. But in terms of like on the buying side, it's probably there's not a lot of inventory on the market right now.
mm,
There's an oversupply in terms of like right now it's a really good time to rent an apartment in Nashville, just
gotcha.
because they're offering 1 to 2 months, of rent concessions or free months. Um, so there's this supply and demand gap to where there's an oversupply.
Yeah,
Simple economics. Like right now, the market's, underwriting's pretty conservative. People are factoring in like, hey, there's 2 months of free rent. Like our occupancy is dropping a little bit. How do we stay competitive compared to these other apartments?
right.
So, whether it's a buyer or seller's market, it just kind of depends on the property and the situation. You may have a little more distress. Like we just are working through an REO deal that a bank took over the asset, so you may start seeing a little more distress, which means it would probably shift towards a buyer's market. But at this point in time, there's a lack of inventory and product for sale in general on the market. Even though the market may favor buyers right now, but there's just not a lot to choose from. You can talk to, and that goes from all the way, $20 million plus deals, even down to just smaller multifamily too. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic right now. I think Nashville's a little insulated, just given it's a pretty healthy market here, but we've still got some, growing pains here as well.
Yeah, man, I hear you. Jake, if you could, like, if anyone listening right now is like in their first year or so of being a commercial broker or like thinking about getting into it, like, what's a lesson learned that you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew this before, building up to where you are today, if you can share something?
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of lessons, and I think it's just sticking with it. It really takes 3 years to really start to get some traction. So you got to have this like long-term mindset. I would say probably the biggest, piece of advice is just like you have to put yourself out there. You have to not be afraid to make the call, and you have to do like those revenue generating activities every single day, not just when you feel like it. Like the most important thing is like, if you're going to commit to making 20 calls a day or 30 calls a day, because that's what you should be doing if you're in especially your first year at brokerage, and just putting yourself out there, setting meetings, because that's the point of those calls. You do it on the days you don't feel like it too, and commit to that every single day for, 1 year, and just see the fruits of your labor. I think a lot of people give up after 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, because, these sales cycles are long and it takes time to get traction and to put. No one knows who you are when you're first starting off, so why would they list a $5 million property with you? So it's the consistency, and you got to have, I think the other thing is just having like a level head. The highs are high and the lows are low, both even in the residential world too.
Very true.
So I think the guys that are able to kind of push through, because a lot of things happen both when you're sourcing a deal and when you're under contract and, post closing. I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs. So those who are able to even negotiate, who can maintain like a stable head and maintain their composure and think things through clearly and not let their ego or emotions get involved. Those are the best brokers by far.
Yeah,
So
well said.
those two things.
Yeah, I'll reiterate something just in case anyone listening didn't pick up on, but even when times are high, you should still be marketing and still be doing your outreach, because what a lot of people, and I have a lot of conversations with people like you and in the industry, Jake, and from my own decade plus experience, is like you work, get a deal, focus on the deal, but then forget about the prospecting part. And then the deal closes and you're like, oh my gosh, what's next? And that's how you go like this, right? But if you can do and commit to 20, 30 calls a day, that's when, and you'll get better as you go along and have more conversations. And that's where the conversion rate kind of starts to go up as well. But don't forget to prospect. You should always be prospecting. I remember I was in a mastermind, like, I don't even know, 5 to 10 years ago or something like that. And they were like, man, marketing is kind of like payroll. Sometimes it's tough, but like you have to pay that check and have it go out, or else it's going to be really hard to be around for 3 years, Jake, to get up to that point where you can start to see the compound effect of your efforts.
Yeah, always be prospecting. I think another thing too is you got to know what you're prospecting for. So that's actually probably another
good point too.
Another crucial point too when you're starting out is, I would focus on a niche, like be an expert in a particular niche. It's hard to be a generalist and be great at everything.
Yeah.
So if you just focus on like one vertical, like I'm just, multifamily, my target's, 25 to 75 units. It's like I have a clear path as to who I want to target. My target client profile is clearly defined, right? So that's the other thing too. You got to know who to prospect to.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. We did that with probates. I teach a probate class on being a specialist, so you can like zero in. I always call it like the going a mile deep instead of a mile wide on your lead gen source, right? So you can become a specialist in multifamily, just do that and do it amazingly well. And then you will be successful if you do not quit and you do not give up and you do it efficiently and effectively. So great advice, Jake. I love that, man. Jake, if anyone listening wants to get in touch with you down in Nashville to chat about multifamily, whether they need help buying or selling, how does one reach you? How can they talk to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn or via email. My LinkedIn is just Jake Clark with SVN Accel, commercial real estate out of Nashville. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and responsive on my DMs. And then by email to jake.clark@svn.com.
Very cool. We'll include all of your contact information. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just look down and you can reach out to Jake. Jake, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your journey and dropping those golden nuggets about being a specialist. I love that. I love hearing that.
I appreciate it, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. Take care.
Yep. Take care.